Greetings and welcome to this week's edition of the Rock County Civics Academy Lesson Plan. The Rock County Civics Academy is a production of Common Sense Reestablished. This LLC was founded by Richard Gruber, Paul Murphy, and Dwayne Severson. CSR is a communications company that provides educational programming on topics of a public interest and is not affiliated with any political party and is committed to common sense-based principles as espoused in the United States Constitution and Bill of Rights. Our programs are nonpartisan. That is, we are not affiliated with any organized or even unorganized political party or political movement. This series of presentations is made possible through the support of our growing list of benefactors, including Big Radio, JATV, Public Access Media, Ragnarsoft, Ragnarsoft.com, Have Camera, Wisconsin, Tom Edwards, The Italian House, Havana Coffee on Milton Avenue. Please keep in mind the views expressed are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily represent the views of our benefactors or the broadcast entities who will be reproducing our content for later public distribution.
Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Rock County Civics Academy. This is edition number 5 out of our planned group of 6 shows. And tonight we're going to explore the world of private not-for-profit organizations. And what you're going to find if you look across the board in Rock County, that there's frankly more than 450 registered private not-for-profit 501c3 or like agencies that exist in Rock County, which is a huge concentration. And the services that they provide to the community range from way over here to way over there and everything in between. One of the challenges that all not-for-profits have had over the course of the last couple of years is, of course, the pandemic that all of us have experienced, and it's had some real impacts on how they do business and why they do business in the fashion that they do is part of what we'll explore tonight. So I want to welcome our panelists tonight. I'll start off on this end of the table, John Westfall. John is someone who has a long reputation of being involved in a lot of different community-based organizations. He's been a successful fundraiser for some major projects that we'll get into here in a bit. But he brings to the table a rich history of being involved in the community at a lot of different levels and truly making a difference. Pastor Jeff Williams, I welcome you tonight. Thanks, Rich. Pastor Jeff has been around long enough to have a real impact across the board. I wanted to make sure that we brought in the Christian side of private not-for-profit organizations because, frankly, in the times that we've had, the challenges that we've had, they really are, in many respects, the foundation by which community strengths or community's weaknesses are identified. So Jeff, I welcome you. Jessica Loker is the executive director of ECHO, and ECHO is one of those organizations with a long, rich history in our community of doing things for those less fortunate. And Jessica is now the second executive director of that organization, and she's doing a marvelous job of expanding that mission just a little bit and improving upon the delivery of services that they make that affect so many people in so many different ways. Mary Fanning Penny is the president and CEO of the United Way of Blackhawk region. I think I got it right this time.
Yes, you did, sir.
And for those of you that are familiar with United Way, I will tell you that the thing that most people recognize is that they raise funds across the community for a whole host of different agencies and organizations. What many people don't realize is the depth and breadth of the organizations and programs that United Way supports, and we'll talk about that a little bit tonight. Jeannie Vogt wears a couple of different hats. One of their hats is she's the business manager at St. John Vianney Parish here in town. She also maintains a very important role with the Pregnancy Helpline here in Janesville, and I welcome Jeannie to the panel. And to my immediate right is Kathy Hampson, who is the president of Can Do Industries, and Can Do Industries is something that I think is familiar to all of us as an agency that provides a whole host of different services to individuals who are challenged in a variety of different ways, and we'll get into some of the specifics there. What I want to do to start a conversation tonight, though, is ask the question, and I think I'm going to start with you, Jessica Locher. ECHO is totally dependent on its survival based upon how the community responds to your requests for assistance. You, in turn, based upon that response, are able to reach out and do a host of different things for less fortunates in our community. How has your business changed in the last couple of years because of the pandemic?
So pre-pandemic, as you mentioned, 85% of our annual operating budget was from community members, donations, individuals sending $25 a month up to $500 a month. That really was our bread and butter of our budget, and then the other 15% came from government grants. With the pandemic, though, we were able to access recovery funds and increase our services. During the pandemic, we received about $200,000 the past 2 years, each year, for emergency lodging. That was the biggest need we saw increase during the pandemic. So pre-COVID, we were providing 3,000 to 4,000 nights at local motels. Last year in 2021, we provided 9,292 nights, and we're already close to 9,000 this year. And we still have a couple more months left of this year. So without that government assistance, there's no way we would have been able to continue to meet that need in our community. So I'm worried what we're going to do next year because that money is going away. But we're very grateful to the community, though, because the community is what helps pay for all of our client advocate staff, except for some other grants that we do have. So.
Mary Penny, your agency raises money for a whole host of different programs and organizations. The challenges in the community, I think, are felt rather acutely in your fundraising efforts. How's your business changed in the last couple of years?
Like so many of our nonprofit partners, United Way Blackhawk Region had to be pretty nimble in our response to the pandemic and shift gears, exploring the ways in which we communicate and conduct our workplace campaigns. That has traditionally been United Way's main bread and butter, is being within a workplace and inviting contributions via payroll deduction. So the inability to convene, the inability to be in a room with people, really necessitated more digital outreach and strategies. So we had to implement things like text to give and Zoom presentations and all of those kinds of more digitally inclined mediums. And so we've applauded our nonprofit partners for also looking at their service delivery models and being really creative. Things that may have looked like a communal meal in the past had to turn into a takeaway box, an individually served meal instead of being together in a room. But the nonprofits, similar to our partners in the private sector, were swift to implement changes without skipping a beat to serve our most vulnerable neighbors.
Thanks, Mary. Pastor Jeff, you're in the business of reaching out and touching a lot of people's lives at a lot of different levels. The pandemic, I think, has affected membership and membership coming to services and actually taking part in the various things that are offered through your ministry. Share with us, if you would, just how much that has impacted your ability to continue to fulfill the mission you have.
I think in many ways, Rich, it's enhanced it just because, as you said, you had to think on your feet. You had to be on your toes. And I think one of the things that helped us was prior to COVID, I approached our board about hiring a systems technology pastor. I just think we need to be streaming. We need to get our infrastructure better, and they agreed, and so they hired yet another pastor. Well, he got us streaming so that when we were shut down, we really could just keep on going. But there was an element of fear in that one moment, one Sunday I'm preaching to hundreds of people, the next Sunday there's nobody. There's not a person in the chair. And what's going to happen to the ministry that we've built for these last 30 plus years? And what we found is that people are just engaged in a different way. And so one of the things we've tried to do, some of you know Laura Bergeron, who was the head of our Faith in Action team. So we try to do involvement in nonprofits every month of the year so that we're engaged in, whether it's Coats for Kids or Back to School Bash, that nonstop year round we are engaged. And so we let them know church isn't closed. We are just doing church in a different way. And so every week it was either Laura or myself, here's our next project for the city, or here's what we did for the city. We passed out this many backpacks, we passed out this much food, we raised this many coats. So just keeping it in the forefront of people, let them know that the doors are shut, but the ministry still goes forward. And then of course adopting, like you said, different ways to give, right? So income goes from being mostly the offering that's in person to mostly, digital electronic giving. And there's some benefits for that, and we're still not back to full steam as far as attendance is concerned, physical attendance, but it's also enabled us to stream and to reach, like we've partnered with a church in Ukraine. So we've been able to raise $44,000 for that church, and they're distributing it to the families in need in Ukraine, in Poland, those who've come over the border for safety, even throwing parties for the kids. And they'll send back, I just got 2 videos today where they send back, thank you Faith Community Church for feeding us, thank you Faith Community Church for helping us to buy our clothes. And so that people can see that even though we've been impacted by the pandemic, ministry need is still there, ministry still goes forward. And here we are now touching people in Poland and Ukraine, which I don't think would have happened before the pandemic and streaming and all and Zooming and all of that. We wouldn't even know how to do that. So
Things have changed.
I'd get outside of our borders, even.
Excellent. Jeannie Vogt, you're in a leadership role in an organization that's pretty specialized in the pregnancy helpline.
Yes, we are.
And just like every other private not-for-profit, you're extremely dependent upon how the public perceives what you're doing and frankly how well you're doing it. What were the challenges that the pandemic created for you?
Well, I'd like to say that the most unexpected challenge was that we hired a new executive director about 4 weeks before COVID shut everything down. And she started actually on site the week before. And when we interviewed her, we're like, well, this is nice. She happens to have a nursing degree in infectious disease, but we'll never need that. And so that became providential for all of us that she was there. So she immediately stepped into action. She had background of what we needed to do to keep our clients safe. And what we all know is babies need diapers regardless of whether there's a pandemic or not. So she sprung into action to get our volunteer counselors to be able to meet safely with people, whether it was like you park here in the parking lot and you park over here and we'll get what you need in the middle. But we managed to keep going, and the public was very supportive of us. We are blessed to not have suffered financially from having the pandemic shut us down. And quite honestly, I think that because we were able to stay open, we were able to share our message with more people who didn't hear that message in other places during that time. So our care classes we have are booming. They can't hardly keep up with them right now. And about 7,000 diapers a month we give away. So that's a lot of diapers.
It's a lot of diapers. It's a lot of diapers. Kathy Hansen, your organization provides a whole host of services that are pretty darn labor and people intense.
They certainly are, yeah.
From the sheltered work activities that you do to the group home structure to a host of other things. How did your business change because of the pandemic?
Well, one of the things that the pandemic did do is it was extremely hard on our clients. They were staying home. So we couldn't have them in. They were staying home. The guardians and the parents were very concerned because people were depressed and they're used to seeing their friends and they're used to having a job and getting a paycheck. So that was extremely difficult on our clients. And when we did start having them come back in, we had to do it very gradually and in phases. And we had to spread out more, just like everybody else. So and learning to wear the mask, and for someone that has a hard time breathing or has some kind of a challenge or a disability, that was really hard to get them to do that. So putting that out there, that it was extremely hard on them coming back to work was such a joy for them, and they were so happy to see their friends again and so happy to be able to do something productive instead of sitting in front of a TV all day like a lot of us. We as an organization had to jump into action as far as we were still getting work for our production facility from a lot of manufacturers where we do packaging and things like that. Well, we didn't have clients anymore. But we also didn't have a program anymore. So a lot of our program staff jumped into our production area and started doing some of the work. Like you, we were able to get some relief with the PPP funds, and we were able to stay around. But it was extremely difficult on that organization. And coming back, we are different as far as, very cautious about cleanliness and hygiene and all of those things that we have to be with our clients. I think it's made us appreciate what we have a lot more, and I think it's made the clients definitely appreciate it. With our programs, like everybody else's, our adult daycare is going to have to increase, double in size in the next 10 years because of the senior population. We serve people with Alzheimer's and dementia there. We know we have to increase our living and learning program, which serves people from 16 to 24. There was a big gap in Rock County for that. So we know we have to increase some things, but we've got the labor shortage that's kind of putting a damper on everything. But yeah, it is one thing that it has made us do is really realize how thankful we are to have the organization that we do and that we are able to serve Rock County like we do.
Thanks, Kathy. John Westphal, you have a reputation for taking on tough assignments irrespective of the economy. You've got an amazing track record of doing some phenomenal fundraising for a whole host of different organizations, whether it be JPAC or your current venture with the Children's Museum. Did the pandemic cause you to rethink how you approach your current venture, the fundraising for the Children's Museum? And if so, how so?
No, the pandemic really had no impact on the Children's Museum because what the Children's Museum has been and currently is, but is not going to be. So the Children's Museum right now is really a communication service, like a website with a lot of information about early childhood development and how to keep your kids learning while they're playing and all that stuff, ideas, and a newsletter, information, and we also do what we call outreach. We'll go to the farmer's market and hand out play kits for kids to be creative and constructive. Well, when you're a website, a newsletter, doesn't matter, pandemic means nothing. So there really has been no impact other than a higher interest from families in what a children's museum can offer, because when everybody's shut down and inside and going stir crazy, looking for stuff for their kids to do, and you can only send them outside in the snow in the backyard so many times. What we are going to offer is a unbelievably phenomenal big children's museum downtown, a facility that's going to be transformative. Now, if we were a museum, that's a really big place with a lot of people showing up, pandemic would affect us. But so far, it's been not applicable to us.
Okay, thank you. Because as a follow-up to that, I want to ask the question, how do you get from where you are today to that phenomenal transformative project going forward into the future? What has to happen between now and when we cut the ribbon and we have the first family walk through the door?
Confidence. Confidence by us and confidence in the community. So when we started in 2007, I was on the founder of the steering committee. The Children's Museum grew out of a capstone project from the Leadership Development Academy. And that's when I got involved, and then 2008 came along when the world kind of blew up. GM shut down. So we've been just like I like to say, a pot of stew on the stove just simmering, keeping the aroma going in the community. So then it's timing of when people are confident, people like me, other people on our board, and other potential very generous donors who, when we start talking to them, say it's time. So that's what makes the difference. Energy, passion, timing, confidence. That's the difference.
Kathy Hansen, the funding stream for Can Do is kind of a unique mix.
It is, yep. We have a lot of different sources.
You have a lot of different sources, some of which are dependent upon the general public and contribution at that level, but much more is dependent upon government investment.
That too.
In the course of the last couple of years, how has that funding stream changed, and how did that change affect how you do business?
It is, and like everybody else, we've had to tighten our belts a little bit, and because we are not getting as much funding as we used to, and those funding sources have changed. So it's a balancing act. That's why, not just looking at the gaps in Rock County of people that are being served with disabilities. That is the most important thing. That's very mission-based, but it's also, we have to make sure we can survive. So we have to provide services that we can get funded for. So that is the trick. And like I said, it is a constant balancing act. We're constant looking at, how can we get more money from different sources? Because we also have to raise, as everybody I'm sure in here that has employees has had to raise their cost of wages, and cost of everything has gone up. We had a very difficult time with our catering business, trying to keep that going and trying to make some changes there. But with labor shortage and food going up and COVID and you name it, we had to make some major changes in that area. So it's constantly a balancing act. We just went through our budgeting process. We are asking for, some more funding from different places. We definitely have a good fund development person and a grants person in our arena right now. So hopefully, we're going to make it all work.
Jessica, your agency's had to change too. You've had to adapt. Have your funding streams adapted with you?
So we are receiving more government funding from HUD to provide the services that we've seen an increase in need for. There is an extreme shortage of housing right now, so we're looking for more funding for our motel voucher program, as I mentioned earlier, and then we are also have seen and have been able to receive funding to provide more longer-term rental assistance in the community for those that are homeless. One of our newest partnerships, as I mentioned before we started recording, that my biggest thing when I took over is collaborations. One of our newest collaborations is with Project 1649, which we are going to be providing 10 units of housing for unaccompanied homeless youth, so they'll be able to actually have their own independent housing versus having to live in the transitional living program. So it'll be geared more towards those that are more self-sufficient, but they'll still be receiving ongoing case management from 1649, but we'll be doing the housing piece because the housing is what ECHO knows. We're well known in the community for our housing. So we're super excited for that. So that's an increased government grant that we received. So really having our operations coordinator and myself, we're really out there looking for the different HUD funding that's available to us to make sure that we're able to provide those services that are needed in the community.
Geneva, the same is true for how you've kept the doors open at the pregnancy helpline. Mm-hmm. You've had to change how you've approached the whole business of funding and that funding stream. What are some of the major changes and how's it working?
Our funding stream has always been from donors that felt a passion for the agency and from grants. So we don't have any governmental income, and we do a few fundraisers. I think our biggest change from fundraising is we had an annual spring banquet, which you can't have, and we went to a virtual banquet, the old Tim Allen no dinner. And one thing is when you don't have a dinner with the dinner, you actually make more money because you don't have to pay for the dinner. So that's been very successful, and that we've actually taken a very different approach with that now, and it's been a successful fundraiser for us. due to current circumstances, we just had a board meeting last night, and we just get busier and busier because there are more people to help. But we too have appreciated collaborations. Jessica has been working with our executive director. There's equipment that's needed, and there's formula, and there's diapers, and we try to work together with different agencies to do what we do best and not try to have like a little food pantry, because we know we can connect with Echo and that sort of thing. So we've had to move faster, basically. We have 4 part-time employees and about 15 volunteers in different capacities, and they've been busy.
You alluded to it earlier just a bit, Pastor Jeff, that you've had to change your approach to keeping the doors open from a financial perspective. Share a little bit more, if you could, about how some of those changes have come about and what's working and what's not working.
Yeah, well, I mentioned as we started to stream, of course, you start doing electronic giving. Our revenue comes from our congregants, right? That's the only source we have. And so I think one thing that hasn't changed is vision casting, so needs have changed a little bit, but you've got to vision cast and get people to empathize with the situation. So when, for instance, we have our bottles that we're going to fill with change for you guys, we talk about the fact that, listen, for those moms, their need for formula and their need for diapers when they can't get employment it's changed for them. It's harder for them. So you try to get them to empathize and think about, what if they were a mom and they had a little one and they weren't getting their income? They're in a place where they are more dependent. They don't want to be there. They're not going to remain there, but now they're there. And so some of you who've been able to keep your income during this time, come alongside these who need it at this time. So you're appealing to the heart, which I think that never changes, right? And to vision cast the difference we can make in an organization like yours, I think is important. And then thinking outside the box, we were trying to come up with a way to help the YWCA and the Care House. So we got this idea to work with Fuddruckers. I don't know if you remember that, but we offered a community meal. You got a cheeseburger, fries, and drink completely for free. And then you gave it a gift of any amount, and all of it 100% went to the YWCA. I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but we were able to raise thousands and thousands of dollars in this out-of-the-box idea. And so I think being willing to do things differently is so vital, especially in a time like this.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Mary Fanning Penny, along the same lines, you've had to do some things differently. You've changed some staffing patterns. You've brought on some new fresh blood, as it were. Tell us about how that set of changes has really kind of changed the whole picture of what United Way Blackhawk region looks like today versus what it looked like 3 years ago or 4 years ago.
Sure. Like so many of my peers on the panel, we've undergone quite a few changes, but not all bad. Through COVID, we've gleaned more efficiencies by way of our digital strategies and outreach. We have always prided ourselves on being responsible stewards of donor dollars. That's paramount in all that we do. So something that has continued to be a focus is our accountability. We hold ourselves and our funded partners to a high level of accountability, so that by way of staffing or volunteer recruitment is something that we specifically look for, is results-oriented individuals who want to move the proverbial needle on really tough to solve problems that have existed for decades that a golden ticket solution does not exist for. So in looking at how we cultivate, recruit and retain staff, we want people who obviously have a heart for our mission, but also want to drive results. And again, that's true for both staff and volunteers. By way of our team, we are a lean 5 FTE. That is a reduction from pre-COVID levels. What I would say by way of kind of the funding piece is that we are incredibly grateful to our donors and our corporate partners who in many cases increased their giving through the pandemic because they understood how the needs were intensifying across our community. So it's not been without challenges, but it's not been without some blessings in disguise too, or some unintended results that were positive.
John Westfall, a bit of a follow-up along the same lines. Is the atmosphere in the community as you experience it today different than, say, it was a number of years ago when you put together the JPAC fundraising package? Is the community different today?
Yeah, I think it is in some ways. I mean, I was a founding member of JPAC when it was just an idea. But you know, General Motors was going pretty strong. And while there were some doubts about where GM was going, people were still pretty much company town relying on it. And so I guess I had the feeling that the community felt that there was going to be this constant, perpetual increase in everything. It's changed now because with that gone, we've had to think differently. Everybody has who's lived here, which has changed the way people, I think, get involved, because no longer is GM going to be the leader of the United Way campaign. No longer is GM going to be a potential major donor that you go to. So it's been spread out to more individuals and families and other businesses that have picked up the load and with pride in their community, knowing that somebody's got to step up. People have, I think, stepped up. Businesses and organizations have, including the volunteers who work there. So I think it's different, and I think it's better. More individual and corporate responsibility is what it feels like to me.
Interesting observation. I want to follow up on that line too, because my own sense is the community has matured, as it were. It's gotten through the impact of a GM closure.
Yeah.
And frankly, we're a different community today than what we were back in 2008 and 2009, and it didn't help to go through a recession in the midst of a plant closure and a change of your community fabric. Your observations, Mary, have we changed, and is it for the better?
I concur across the board. I think that we have increased in our commitment to partnership and collaboration. I think that while sometimes in any sector there might be a level of friendly competition, we have come together as a community more regularly and with an innovative call to action. You know, how can we do things differently? How can we be more efficient? How can we ensure that we're not duplicating services? So I think that absolutely has been a testament to working smarter, not harder. And I think that the individual and corporate responsibility, the cross-sectional collaboration has also been really fascinating to see. We maybe used to kind of stay in our own lanes, and that's not really the case anymore. You see these really dynamic collaborations between partners that you wouldn't necessarily expect.
Interesting. Jessica, the population that you serve tends to be lower income, with a host of perhaps greater social need that you're challenged to fulfill. Look at the population that you served 5 years ago versus that you're serving today. Is there a change? Is there a difference? Is there more? Is there less? What's the demand like, and why?
So we are seeing probably about the same number of households. We're serving about 3,600 to 3,900 households on an annual basis. I will say we are seeing an increase of them being seniors, though. Our senior population is now about 10 to 12%, whereas when I first started back in 2004, it was under 5%. We are also seeing quite a few single-parent households. So for those, it's very hard for them to be able to afford the rent, daycare costs, food, and all of that. So we're seeing that increase there too. I would say a large percentage of our clients, they have income. It's just not a sustainable wage or amount from their retirement funds. But we're still seeing about the same between 36 to 3,900 households each year.
Well, there's that old cliche, I guess, and it is reality sometimes, that folks are one paycheck away from being on the street and homeless. Are you experiencing that in the clientele that you're working with?
Yeah, I would say a good percentage, and I wish I brought my fact sheet with me, so I apologize, but I would say most of our households are below 50% county median income, so it's very extremely low income. Yes, so.
And 36% of Rock County households struggle to meet basic needs or maybe one paycheck away from true crises.
What's your experience, Jeannie?
Well, I'll speak to it more from the church side because I get and I will say privilege of answering the door when they come knocking to see if there's help. And first of all, we very much rely on our partnerships with other agencies, and we are a supporting church of Echo, so I feel very comfortable calling Jessica and saying, I don't know what I'm doing, what should I do next? But we've experienced, not in the congregation so much, but in those in our community around us. We're in a changing neighborhood, so we have lots of new friends on a regular basis, and it amazes me with COVID, for instance, you might have just gotten a part-time job that doesn't pay too badly, but if your coworker gets COVID, all of a sudden you're off for 5 days because you're not allowed to come back into work, and not all of the places pay for that anymore. So you've lost that paycheck. So we've had many more requests for help. We do a mobile food pantry once a month in connection with Catholic Charities and Second Harvest, and our numbers echo what the ladies are saying. The number of senior citizens and single families have grown. We kind of were at a lull for a while during COVID. There was a lot of food available. I think Echo had that too. So our numbers went down for that, but we're growing back up as inflation has started up, and it's not unusual to have families of 6 coming through to get a couple of orders of food from us. And then luckily in connection, we can send our leftovers to Echo if there are any. So if nobody wants those plant-based hard-boiled eggs, you guys gladly take them. Thank you very much.
There's something about plant-based hardboiled, but that's a different topic for a different time.
Yes.
Pastor Jeff, what's your experience in that respect?
Well, I think what you're saying is correct. We have to continue to cooperate and form new partnerships. I remember we did a event with Kids Against Hunger where Faith Community coalesced churches and John Wong and Kids Against Hunger coalesced businesses. And we got together at Shopco and we did Million Meals, if you remember that, right? And we want to do something like that at Faith Community on a weekly basis. We have a model called Feed Your Soul in Fort Atkinson, where they prepare a community meal every week for their constituents there. They feed about 275 people a week. We would love to see that in Janesville and be able to partner with businesses and sports teams and the scouts and just, hey, come in and serve. So no matter who you are, if you're hungry, come and have this meal. And that we would just not stay within our church, but say to all the businesses, all the other churches, if you want to come and help and partner with us to help feed the community, we would love to have you participate. When we did that at Shopco, we found sports teams and dance teams and businesses and all different kinds of community life coming together for that one event. Well, could we do that on a weekly basis and continue those partnerships? And so that's one goal that we have as a church for this is our 6th phase of construction. We want to build a commercial kitchen and the infrastructure to be able to have that community meal and working together, right? Rather than reinventing the wheel, how can we come alongside these agencies and help them and assist them? But forming those partnerships that are non-traditional, I think, is something that needs to continue. We did a little bit with Day of Compassion too, if you recall that Pastor Michael Jackson had that, and I guess it's just taking that and expanding that they had a Freedom Fest and try to do something like that on a weekly basis, because as we know, this is getting worse, not better. And there's no quick fix coming our way. We're going to see homelessness increase sadly, we're going to see poverty increase. And so we need to intensify and be creative and lay aside differences we have and work together for the common good. Because we find common ground, we find that's agreement, and we can work together on those things. So,
Thank you. Kathy Hansen, your population is less driven by poverty. It's more specifically driven by the particular disability of the individual involved. Have you seen a change in volume over the course of the last few years?
Yep, well, I will tell you, just since I've been there, and I've been there 2 years, is we have increased need, especially in our senior day services area and in our younger population, the living and learning. We know there's 900 people in Rock County that have disabilities that are between the age of 16 and 24, and we're serving 10 of them right now. So we know we have to grow some of our programs. You know, our problem really is staffing and trying to find people to work. And so we know we have to grow them. We know there's a need out there. We know we could grow them right now if we had the space and we had the staff. So, you know, strategically, we're looking at what are some different ways, like you guys partnering with people that we can partner to make this happen. So, yeah, there definitely is an increased need, and there's going to be even more in the next, like I said, 5 to 10 years, especially with the senior population. But there's a younger population that we're not serving as well as we could, too.
How do you reach out to that population and bring them on board for the services that you provide? When you're so dependent upon outside funding to...
So it's through, you know, all the different DVR, different organizations, but, you know, we also have private people that come in that have a loved one, a guardian that has a disability that will come in and request for services.
You're very dependent upon the business community, the manufacturing community, for at least a portion of the work that you do.
Absolutely, yeah.
Has that partnership been sustainable in the course of the experience the last couple of years? We hear so much about logistical challenges and problems in that respect.
That's a really interesting question, because that's something that has really increased as far as we've had more businesses contact us for work than we ever have. And that is because of the labor shortage, because they're looking again at different ways to try to get work done because they can't hire people. So Can Do has been, we just did a presentation to the manufacturing consortium, and I bet we have 5 or 6 new businesses right now that are trying to get in the door. So we could actually increase our production facility too, if, you know, we could find people.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Where do you see Echo in 5 years? What is going to be different 5 years down the road from where you are today, Jessica?
I think the biggest thing that I'm really focusing on is our collaborations and increasing our housing and homeless services. 3 years ago, we brought on a street outreach program, and thanks to United Way, Blackhawk Region, we now have 2 housing navigators and resource navigators that are assisting those in our community to find housing and access resources in our community that they may need assistance to get into. So really focusing on those programming along with building more housing. So we were a lucky recipient in partnership with Wisconsin Housing Development up in Madison. We are hopefully in spring breaking ground on 6 units of additional transitional housing. So really housing and homeless is where I see our biggest thing. We'll still always be known as our food pantry, but I really think Echo's focus is going to be on the housing and homeless services because that's the biggest need in our community.
And it's been interesting from an outsider perspective to watch the emphasis change at Echo, so that you're now much more involved in transitional housing. You've always been a provider of vouchers for motel rooms overnight, but to be in the actual business of providing transitional housing is a huge change in your mission. Is your volunteer base accepting that, embracing that big change?
I think so, yes. So we actually have quarterly volunteer meetings, and they really enjoy hearing about all the new collaborations and partnerships that we have. But our volunteer base still is focused on the food pantry and the food services. And I will say during COVID, we did take a hit on volunteers, so we could always use more volunteers for our food pantry services. But yeah, they really enjoy hearing about all of the new housing and homeless services that we're taking on.
So some exciting challenges. 5 years from now, what do you see at United Way, Mary?
Well, I think that we continue to shift and evolve as the needs of our community shift and evolve. Through the pandemic, we had to kind of hunker down and focus on critical needs. So as the needs continue to change, we have to be responsive to that. One of my personal goals would be to continue working to demystify fundraising and remove that as a dirty word. You know, we celebrate volunteerism, which is amazing, and we celebrate tangible giving, like donating diapers, which is awesome, and important and necessary. But we also need to celebrate and understand the importance of a financial gift. Not only do organizations need to be able to keep the lights on or provide the voucher, but we also need to be able to have qualified, trained, skilled staff members who are able to deliver services that again help to facilitate life changes. And that is not done often in one interaction. That's something that can take place over the course of weeks, months, perhaps even years. So in giving to United Way or other local nonprofit organizations, we want our donors to feel confident that their gift is being stewarded responsibly and it's actually creating change. So to do that, we have to take the shame, maybe, I don't know a better word, away from talking about fundraising. It's critical to the success of supporting our most vulnerable neighbors or anyone in crisis.
Well, that kind of begs the question, with as many private not-for-profits that we have in the county, you're competing for a limited amount of dollars that may be available out there. How does small organizations such as yours, Jeannie, position yourselves so that 5 years from now you're still a viable organization and able to fulfill your mission?
Well, for the Pregnancy Helpline and Resource Center, it's a love for what the group does. I mean, you're helping babies and families, which is not a hard sell. And so we have donors that have been with us for a long time, but I think when you put the actual message out there of why you need the funding, you can't take your child home from the hospital without a car seat. And if you can't afford a car seat, because we know they're not cheap, you have to figure out where to get a car seat from. So we've gotten into a position where the different hospitals will contact us. Do you have a car seat? And so when you are talking to a potential donor, you'd say, well, your money can go directly to buying this car seat to help these children go home. That's not a hard sell. So as long as we keep the message of what our core mission is to help those families in need, I think you find donors that have a love for your particular mission, and they'll keep going with it. And the churches have been tremendous with supporting us since 1983. So that's a connection that we always like. It all tends to go back to collaboration and making sure we're not duplicating services and people feeling like their money is going to what they intended it to do.
Pastor Jeff, declining membership across the board in organizations such as yours, what's the picture 5 years from now for your organization?
Yeah, well, we've seen a little bit of decline in numbers, but an increase in engagement online, right? So that it's not just your community, but it's the country, right? That have come on board. So it's probably an overall increase. But I think one thing we want to do is we've been focusing on homelessness and food and all that, which we should do. But also mental health is important, emotional health is important. And so one of the things we've tried to do and increasingly do is to provide support groups for our community. And so right now we have 10 support groups and they don't really cost anything. You know, we have a pastoral staff that we pay for, and they lead them, and other professionals lead them, but we have Safe Interpersonal Relationship on Boundaries. We have Mending the Soul, which is for women who've gone through abuse. We have Grief Share for those who've gone through loss, cancer support groups, Hope and Light for those struggling with depression and anxiety, addictions ministries. And we make clear when we start these that they're for our whole community. And so we have people, a lot of people coming who don't go to our church and will never set foot inside of our church. That's okay, because we're here not just to serve Faith Community, we're here to serve Janesville and Rock County. And so our goal is to continue to provide and increase more support groups, because with all the toll that this has taken on society and all the negative impact things like COVID have had, it's caused not only financial hardships, but it's caused mental health hardships. And so let's acknowledge that, let's talk about that, and let's come alongside as a nonprofit, let's come alongside of our community and provide a safe place for those people to come and receive help. So I think 5 years from now, we'll have many more different support groups. We have goals for many more different groups to come into our facility and receive that help you need confidentially. If you're struggling with addiction or depression, you got a safe place to go. And I think 5 years from now, we'll be doing even more in that regard.
Our panelists tonight are here to discuss the state of private not-for-profit organizations in our community, their role, their evolving role as we go forward. And we're honored to have with us John Westfall, Pastor Jeff Williams, Jessica Loker, Mary Fanning Penny, Jeannie Vogt, and Kathy Hansen. If those folks in the audience have any questions that they would like to ask the panel, I would invite you to fill out one of our question cards, and my partner in crime back there, Paul Murphy, will collect them here in time, and we'll share those with the panel, and we'll continue with that conversation. I want to, excuse me, Kathy, I want to go to you and ask the same question. What's the 5-year outlook for Can Do? You're going through some pretty dramatic changes right now. What's the future bring?
Well, we're really trying to come back to our mission and mission focused, and really looking at the needs in Rock County and how we grow our programs based on the needs, not just based on whatever we think we can do good. But again, the challenge is staffing, and we have CNAs that staff our day services program, and we have very talented people that do that and people that have been there a long time. But we do see a need for growth, and that's both in our community employment programs and our production facility, especially in the day services aging population. We see that doubling in the next 10 years. So, I see for Can Do, it's bigger than all of us. It's going to be a bigger facility, and hopefully, this labor shortage turns around a little bit, and if it doesn't, we have to figure out some efficiencies.
John Westfall, 5 years from now, what do you see as the demand in the community, and how do we fulfill that demand with your efforts, for example, with some niche organizations that you're working to bring to the table and fulfill another need within the community?
Yeah, I'll tell you about the Children's Museum. Let me give you some perspective. The largest tourist attraction in Rock County is Rotary Gardens. They have 100,000 visitors a year, 60,000 of which come in 5 weeks during the holiday light show. 5 years from now, there's going to be 90,000 visitors coming to downtown Janesville to a 20 to 25,000 square foot children's museum. And what it's going to be like 5 years from now is going to be full of little kids who are smiling and sweaty and laughing, who are breaking stuff, who are going to be smearing frosting from birthday cakes on the wall and soiling our carpet with Kool-Aid and stuff, okay? It's going to be the happening place to be. It's going to be a place where people are going to compete to be on our board. We're going to turn volunteers away. It's going to be the place. It's going to be rocking, and it's going to be transformative for my hometown. Okay, that's 5 years.
Vision casting. That's what I'm talking about.
It's definitely vision casting.
But I'd like to say something.
Sure, please.
These 5 people I know of them, and I know of their reputations. And I feel very fortunate that these people are in my hometown doing what they do. And they are passionate, and they are empathetic about what they do. But I'm speaking to you guys as a donor. I'm not a philanthropist, I'm just a donor. What I don't want is your passion to turn into scope creep, because I see it all the time. And what I mean by that is the pregnancy helpline does your mission. But all of a sudden, because you guys have big hearts, you decide that you're going to get into disabled adult vocational services. And all of a sudden now you've muddied the waters with Can Do. Now you come to me, ask for a big donation for what? And you don't really even know who you are. So when I'm done donating to the pregnancy helpline, because I'm going to donate to the little startup that is actually doing what was originally your mission. You guys all want to make the world better. And I'm better for it because of you guys. But if you start blurring the lines, I'm out. And I'm just speaking as one of many donors. And it happens too often. And if I keep going on this, one of the reasons it happens is because poor governance in your organizations. You guys are always struggling to find volunteers or people on your board. On the other side of it, in the community, there are businesses who the boss says to their employees, you got to get out in the community. You got to make relationships. You got to do business development. And so they look around and go, oh yeah, Echo's looking for somebody and you're looking for volunteers, so they're on your board. I've been on so many boards of nonprofits where my colleagues show up and at the meeting they slid open the manila envelope that's got the minutes and it's got the agenda for this meeting. And they're there for the rubber chicken or the chicken salad sandwich you're giving them. And they don't do anything. They just are there. They're just beers to build their resume.
Yeah, they filled a chair sometimes.
They
They just simply fill a chair, and
Yep.
and we're facing an environment where you can't necessarily afford to have people just fill a chair. And strategically, you can't afford mission creep because you've got a crowded community with a lot of private not-for-profits that are all trying to maintain a mission with a very limited donor base.
What happens, these people are resume builders. And it's the 80-20 rule on your organization, where 20% of the people do 80% of the work, 80% of the people just show up. Then what happens, there's no governance. And people like you, because of your big hearts, it becomes a cult of personality. And you guys take over. And the organization runs amok. Then somebody's got to come in and fire the executive director and start all over and get back to the original thing. I would say to people who are consuming this content, you want to get involved in something, pick something you're passionate about. Don't just because your boss says you got to do something in the community, go get involved. You love your church, get on the council at the church and make the church a better place. Don't just go join the Can Do board because you're going to polish your resume. And then the other thing I'd say is, when those people, when you're on a board, hold these people accountable, because that's what you want. You want help to help you think stuff through. Both sides, it's necessary to limit the scope creep and for people to provide governance to you guys, which is what we want to do as volunteers and board members, is help and provide governance.
Well, and the success or the failure going forward with organizations, because they're so dependent upon that donor and that donor funding, is to be able to stick to their mission. What is the safeguard that you have in place, Jessica Loker? You know, you're now expanding into a new area.
Yes,
And what's the mechanism that you have in place to make sure that you're not stepping on some other private not-for-profit's footprint in order to fulfill what is a real need in the community?
So I think with I said I wanted to be in 5 years. I don't think it's going off of our mission, because our mission is to provide basic needs in the community of food, housing, and other supportive services. So housing, our homelessness, we need to get them housed. So to me, I'm not mission scoping, but Our executive committee is very, very supportive and make sure any new programming ideas that we at ECHO that the staff wants to do is making sure it's fitting into those categories of food, housing, and supportive services for the low income and homeless population, because that is our mission. We also do strategic planning every 5 years. Part of that, we'll actually be doing that next year. We did get off a year because of COVID, but next year we'll be doing a community survey to see what needs are in the community that the community feels that could fit into our mission, or if we need to hit or back down on some services to really focus on key things. So we do that strategic planning every 5 years, and that also includes a client survey to see what our clients are actually needing from us. And we do a lot of outreach and participation in our local coalition of homeless and low-income providers. We are a key agency of the Homeless Intervention Task Force here in Rock County. I think I lost my train. I apologize.
And let me shift here just ever so slightly, because what you're saying fits directly into one of the questions from the audience, and that is, how do you engage your donors and your volunteers so that you have informed donors and volunteers who are supporting a mission that is solid and isn't going to be into a mission creep mode? And frankly, the other half of that question is, how do you vet the people that are volunteering to serve on your boards or volunteering to serve within the programs that you're offering to make sure that they're there for the right reasons? What's the process that you go to vet your volunteers, Kevin?
So we have to be very careful with volunteers, with people that have disabilities. They have to have a background check, whether they're a volunteer or whether they are working for the staff. So, we do background checks on everybody that's a volunteer. We always have to have, depending on the program, professionals. So it can be like retired school teachers make great job coaches. So as soon as these retired school teachers come up, we try to grab them, and we know the groups that they're involved in. But we don't have a lot of volunteers that come in and help with our people with disabilities. We use volunteers for things like helping getting our garden done, or we might use volunteers for events, fun events that we do with clients, or outings sometimes. But we always do background checks, always.
Okay.
Yep.
Mary Fanny Penny, your organization is very dependent upon volunteers. How do you vet that large number of volunteers that you're dependent upon to make sure that they are going to be solid on your mission and stay within the boundaries, that lane that's been established for you?
Yeah, well, we absolutely have an expectation of accountability. So we clearly define, let's say for our board of directors, that we have an automatic rotation schedule, that they understand their fiduciary responsibilities, their duty of loyalty. We clearly communicate expectations of time commitment and stewardship and advocacy. So really it goes to clear communication right out of the gate. By way of vetting our volunteers, we are strategic in trying to understand what any gaps we might have by way of expertise, skills, or talents, and going after those individuals or subject matter experts that can help bring that needed skill to the table. I would say by way of volunteers who serve in our community grant review process, that's an entirely different vetting. It's on both ends. We vet the volunteers and the applicant organizations. And I think there, really the key phrase would be due diligence. We have to understand that the volunteers hopefully bring a level of not only big-heartedness, but health, education, or financial stability awareness or expertise, and that we've conducted our due diligence. You said, Rich, at the beginning of this session, how many registered nonprofits we have in Rock County, and John was saying, that there's this overlap and so much duplication. Part of that is a lack of due diligence, that organizations start up out of the goodness of their heart because they haven't done their homework, without understanding or realizing or reaching out to understand what already exists, what's in place, what's working, what isn't. We need to be as diligent as possible because resources are precious and few. So that absolutely applies to donors. It applies to financial support, human capital or equity, if you will. So I think we have to conduct that due diligence at every level of the organization.
Pastor Jeff, the same question. How do you vet out your donors and your volunteers to make sure that they're all consistent with your mission?
Yeah, we do a monthly program called GPS, which stands for Gifts, Passion, Service. And it's an assessment tool that the slogan is to put the right people in the right places for the right reasons. And so we do a teaching, we provide them lunch, and talk about service and why it's important and how we serve and what our motivation is. And then they take an assessment tool, which helps us define their gifts and passions. And then after that, we sit down for a consultation where one of our staff pastors will sit down with them, talk about the ministries we have, look at their spiritual gift analysis, and try to find what's a good match. So if somebody says, I've got a passion for the homeless. Well, rather than us starting a homeless ministry, we've come alongside of the Gifts Men's Shelter with a ministry called Transcend. And so that helps because Gifts don't want the people there forever. They want them to be self-sufficient, move out, get a job, get their own place. So we come along Gifts and work in conjunction with Gifts to help give them tools to transcend, to get out of that situation. And so we look at their gifts assessment and we decide, well, where do you fit within the 80 different sub-ministries we have? Or are we referring them to a nonprofit in our community because we don't necessarily have that ministry that we offer? And then we do a background check as well for every volunteer. You cannot serve a faith community church unless you've had a background check and unless you've gone through GPS. And unless you've been around for I think it's 4 months is the minimum. So we got a little bit of understanding who you are, and you know who we are, but that test, that analysis, the training, the consultation, the forms that you fill out, and going through all those forms, and the background check provide the network, the structure, before we launch them into ministry.
Jeannie, both the same question. How do you vet your donor base, and how do you vet those that are interested in serving on your board as volunteers?
I would say both the board and our regular volunteers. There is, as Pastor Jeff said, you get to know someone for at least 4 months. So as far as board members go, they normally will give us a couple of references of people that they know that have been connected with the board itself or the agency, and most of our board members tend to come from our volunteers. They kind of grow into that. So we wouldn't be having a stranger just come on. There's a whole guideline set for board members. There is training for volunteers based on the level of their volunteering. A nice entry level is to come in and sort baby clothes and have conversations with our part-time employees, and that gets a level of understanding of what your real interest is for it. And there is, for our volunteers that take the phone calls on the emergency line, there's a 6 to 8 month training they go through prior to doing that, and then they're partnered with someone as a mentor. I just would like to say, John, I can't agree with you more. And one of the constant things our board talks about is mission creep. And we do basically 3 things, and our goal is to do them well. And every time we're like, okay, we've got this, we can stretch into something else, we pull ourselves back in and go, this is our mission. And to speak to Mary's point, and sorry to divert a little bit, but there are many agencies out there, and it's frustrating for me as an individual when I see something pop up and I know enough different groups that are out there from the church work, and it's like, oh shoot, those people that have a heart for that need to go talk to this group that's already established. They're looking for more help. Please don't start another one, because you just dilute all of the resources. And somebody's going to fold, and somebody's going to be sad, and somebody's going to be mad. Not because of competition, but because they weren't able to be successful. So I couldn't agree with you more, John. You have to watch your mission.
How do we communicate to the community our needs? What's the tools that you use to selectively communicate to the people out there your future, what your needs are? There's a volunteer helpline, or there used to be a volunteer helpline. But frankly, we're dealing with a couple of generations of young people that, frankly, your future is dependent upon their involvement, and getting to them and having them understand your mission and your vision is a challenge. How do you get the message out to the younger folks in our community that what you do is important and that they should be a part of it? Kathy?
I'd just like to say, not coming from the not-for-profit world, I came in as a marketing person. And one of the things that I've noticed that the nonprofits are very, very good at is the heart piece of it, and the caring, and the being caretakers and making sure that their mission is being provided. One thing that I think that we struggle with is marketing and really communicating what our mission is. And I think sometimes people that have that mindset of, we're caring for our clients, we're caring for this, don't think about, I have to be out there. And I can't tell you how many people that I've talked to in just a short time that I've been here that didn't know what Can Do did. And Can Do has been around for 60 years. They thought we were a catering business. So it's just really interesting to me to see, because they have been around 60 years and they've been doing wonderful work in the community. But there's a lot that we can reach, and we do, and especially the young people right now, we have to be able to reach them. It's not just a billboard and a TV commercial anymore. There's other ways that we have to reach them. Getting them involved is great, but sometimes, like some of our programs, we don't offer outside people to come in. So it's really important for us to be out there talking about what our mission is. So a marketing plan, I believe that a not-for-profit should have a marketing plan every year.
So how do you do that, Kathy?
Well,
how do you
it's
get
part
out
of
there and get the message to that future set of volunteers that will keep your organization's doors open?
It's always going to be difficult too, because you have to be able to do, the digital media things. You have to be able to get out there in the community. Even a lot of the, just like churches, Rotary clubs, Kiwanis clubs, those are all shrinking. We used to be able to, get out in front of, the clubs and the service clubs, and that was part of our marketing plan. I still believe you need to do that, but you also have to get younger people employed to help you with your marketing plan. Because there's a lot of things now that I've got some of my marketing people telling me that we need to be on this and we need to do that, and I'm like, I don't even know what that is. So it's really important to get young people involved. And again, like our people with disabilities, we've got aunts and uncles, cousins. I had an uncle that was Down syndrome. I watched the different generations on how they treated him and how they involved him. And the younger people now, even more so in the schools, are getting more and more comfortable and involved in helping people with disabilities. So that's a beautiful thing, but we need to get them in. So a part of it's marketing plan, and part of it's asking, how do we reach you?
It's a universal problem across the board for all of your organizations, and that is attracting those folks who previously haven't been involved, getting them in the door, making sure that they're there for the right reason, and then helping them understand and grow with you as an organization. Pastor Jeff, what's your approach? How do you do that?
Well, we have, I go back to vision casting. I'll share a story. I was doing some consulting for a Catholic church in our community, and they said, hey, we want to get more involved in our community. Would you come and talk to our board? And so I showed up at the board, and we're just going to do Q&A for a while. And I had this spontaneous idea. I said, can I see your bulletin? And they showed me the bulletin. I said, we're going to do a little experiment here. I'm going to ask you what these events are, and we're going to draw arrows out if it's for our city, and we're going to draw arrows in if it's for you guys. And so I said, this thing on Monday night, what is that? And they describe it. I go, okay, well, that's arrows in. And then I went, okay, now on Tuesday, tell me about this group that meets here at the church. And they, okay, well, that's arrows in. We got halfway through the bulletin, and everything was so far arrows in, and one of the nuns goes, uh-oh, because she kind of saw where it was going. We finished going through the bulletin, everything was arrows in, and I said, I think we see the problem. Everything it's nothing wrong with doing something for yourself, but you need to have arrows out too. whether you're an individual, whether you're a church, a business, a city, we've got to be thinking about others. We've got to be having an arrows out mentality. So for me, as the leader, I am constantly beating that drum. In fact, arrows out terminology is something everybody in the church would be able to articulate. They know what that means to be arrows out. And so every month, then I got nervous. I went back to our church bulletin and said, I want to check this out. And it was okay. But we want to do something as a church for our city, for our community, for our world, every single month of the year. So year round, every month, every year, we're doing something for arrows out. And it gets to be ingrained in you. So, okay, Operation Christmas Child ends, and now it's time for Share the Warmth for coats, and then it's time for Angel Tree for children who have parent incarcerated, and now we change to this, and it's just always something. So it becomes habitual. And so we just know we don't just exist for ourselves, but we exist to help those who are around us. And that value becomes ingrained through modeling it, through teaching on it, and doing it, demonstrating it. And now, after 30 some years, we know the drill, right? And so when you have that mentality and understand that vision, and you're doing it all the time, you know, and you kind of share it too. So it's not the same people, as John talked about. You burn out that 20%. So you want to try to get that figure more towards 50%, and just realize you can't do every project we're going to do every month of the year, but there needs to be a few times in the year when it's your turn, and it's your turn to chime in now. And so that there's a rhythm. After a while, there gets to be a rhythm. I hate to say it, but almost like a machine, where you know, okay, this is the time we're going to do the back to the school batch and help children that are coming back to school. And so that team gets in gear.
One of the qualities that we've established in our conversations is the fact that community is built upon the idea that we're all in this together, and we should all work toward a common end of being part of a civil society that's able to get things done for a common purpose. In the minute or so we've got left, let me ask this real basic question, and we just have a minute or so left. How do people reach you if they want to be passionate and involved in your mission? How do they reach out and catch Jessica Locher and ECHO? How do they get involved?
So if you want to volunteer at ECHO, you can go to our website at echojanesville.org. We have our application on there, and you can also contact us via email through our website, or you can definitely just reach out to me at 608-754-5333. We definitely encourage the community to be a part of ECHO, because it's everyone cooperating to help others is how we do our mission. So
Mary Fanny Penny, same question. How do people get in contact with you?
We agree. We want to live united. We are on almost every social media channel. You can go to liveunitedbr.org. You can also, if you need help and resources, call 211 to be connected to local programs and services. And 608-314-8422 is my direct line, Mary Fanning-Penny at lubr.org.
And be sure and emphasize the hyphen.
Thank you, sir.
Jeannie Vogt.
Well, to get a hold of the Pregnancy Helpline, you can go to our website or our Facebook page for pregnancyhelpline.net, and just call the number, and any volunteer will help you and direct you to the right direction to help them.
Kathy Hansen, what do we do to get in contact with Can-Do Industries?
Same thing. You can go to Can-Do Industries website. You can go to our Facebook page. You can contact me at khansen@candoindustries.com. And you can also call my cell phone, which is 262-880-3977. Call me directly.
Boy, that's risky. Whoa. I speak from experience there. Boy, that's risky. Pastor Jeff, how do they reach out and catch you?
Yeah, faithcommunitychurch.net is the website. On Facebook, of course, and we have a State Line campus, a Spanish campus for those who speak Spanish. We have our own service in Spanish, and then the Janesville campus. So social media or faithcommunitychurch.net.
John Westfall, folks want to get in want to get in contact with you and your organization.
Google
give
the
your-
Children's Museum
Give
of
them your
Rock.
cell.
No. Google the Children's Museum of Rock County. You'll find anything you ever want to know about us.
Excellent. I want to thank our panelists tonight, John Westfall. Pleasure having you here, Pastor Jeff Williams. Always great to see you again, Jessica with Echo. Best of luck going forward, Mary Fanning. Penny, you always bring us a little sunshine to the room, and I appreciate that. Jeannie Vogt, I know both of those hats that you wear, and I appreciate everything that you do. And Kathy Hansen, it's nice that you're able to join us tonight, and I thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
This has been a presentation of Common Sense Reestablished, which is an LLC, a boutique communications firm that was created by my partners and I, Paul Murphy, Dwayne Severson, and myself, for the purposes of bringing educational programming to the community. And we also do a little bit of public relations and public affairs things in our free time. I want to remind folks that the content tonight is the product of the panelists and myself, and we reserve the right to restrict its reuse in any and all forms and fashions. Again, thank you to our panel for joining us. For anyone interested, next week we're going to have a conversation about the state of the media, how we report the news in our community, and well, what's the future going to bring in that respect? And we've got another group of panelists, experts, that'll be joining us to have that conversation next Tuesday night. So plan on joining us if you have the opportunity. Our panelists will be happy to stick around and visit with you after we close things out. And with that, I say thank you, and I hope to see you all again next week. Thanks.
Thank you.